Okay. Right on cue. My dog is ready to go outside.
Good morning, everyone.
Work on my phone, but you're on.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm gonna print this right now so I could do that. Okay.
Listen to what's going on.
There's an ID thingy. Oh. I might get messed up. I'll email them if that happens.
Good morning, everyone. If you are, we're glad to have you with us this morning on this beautiful October day. If you've looked outside, we've got nice crisp weather to wake up to this morning, and the colors are absolutely spectacular. The vibrant reds and russet browns and all of this, that means that fall is here, and there's a lot of activity going on and prepping for the winter season ahead. If you would, please go ahead and put your name in the chat in your organization, just so that will help in preparing the minutes by our secretary. And also, unless you are speaking, just because there's a lot of people on the call this morning, that you go ahead and turn off your microphone unless you are speaking. And then if you would like to be recognized, then I can use our spotters to help us. Just raise your hand, use the app, and we'll be sure to recognize you as we have a wonderful agenda for us today. So we'll just give a few more minutes or another minute or so for others to log on here, because I see the numbers are populating. All right, for those that are joining us, welcome, welcome. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start and call our executive council meeting today for October. We'll call it to order here. And with introductions, I thought there are a lot of us on the call, but it's great when we used to meet in person. We used to go around the room and everyone could share who they were and what organization they represented. So it would be great to just quickly go around the Zoom room to do so. My name is Elizabeth Kessler, and I'm the executive director for the McHenry County Conservation District and serving as chair of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance. It's just so great to see everybody here this morning. Nathaniel, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, I'm Nathaniel Pilla with Orbis Environmental Consulting and serving as the treasurer for Chicago Wilderness. All right, I see Cherie next.
Cherie, are you there?
I'll jump in. I'm Laura Riley. I'm the coordinator of Chicago Wilderness. And I'm going to nominate Felicia next.
Hello, my screens, if you guys can hear me. I'm Felicia Spransky. I'm with Natural Resources Conservation Service here in St. Charles. I'm a new representative replacing Graham Briggs that just really retired. So this is my first meeting and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Glad to have you here. Somebody else want to jump in?
I am Ralph Schultz. I'm with the Forest Preserve District of Will County, and I will throw it over to Jack Darren.
Thank
Jim,
you.
you need to redo your speakers, your mic. You sound like a little mouse. Sorry to jump in there. Please go, Jack.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Jack Darren, Sierra Club, Illinois chapter. I'll pass it to Jerry Edelman.
Good morning, Jerry Edelman, Open Lands, and I'll pass it on to Amy.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm Amy Rosenthal. I am participating from the Field Museum and so happy to be here. And I'm going to send it over to Maria.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Sadowski. I'm a communications consultant with Chicago Wilderness, and I live in Southwest Wisconsin, and I will pass it to Brandon.
Thanks, Maria. Brandon Hayes with Bold Bison Communications and Consulting. And I will send it over. I feel like we're like playing volleyball or something. I'll send it over to Sharon.
Thanks, Brandon. I'm Sharon Dewar with Public Communications Incorporated. We're doing some work on brand and messaging for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Beth.
I am Beth Schwingle. As Sharon said, we're working on the communications plan that we're going to present today. And I will pass it on to Deborah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Walker Johnson with the Forest Preserve Foundation, and I don't see enough names for me to be able to pass it on to. Let me see.
I'll go. This is Kathy Garrity with the Forest Preserves of Cook County. Hi, Deborah. I'm glad you're here.
Hi, Kathy.
I'm on the steering committee and a co-chair for conserving landscapes for biological diversity. Now I'll turn it over to Casey Sullivan.
Hello, I'm Casey Sullivan. I'm with Argonne National Laboratory and I'm on committees. Thank you.
Good morning, folks. I'm Drew Hart. Oops, go ahead. Hi,
John Roger, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and let me flip it over to Drew Hart.
Hey, thanks, John. I'm Drew Hart. I'm with the U.S. Forest Service, and I'm with the Urban and Community Forestry Program and serving here in the Chicago region. And I'll send it over to Victoria Wittig.
Good morning, everyone. Victoria Wittig, Northwest Indiana Urban Waters Federal Partnership. I serve as the ambassador for the region. And I'm also delighted to be on the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Steering Committee. And I will pass it over to Mark Bowman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Bowman. I'm at the Field Museum, and I have been working with a mapping hub. We'll hear more about later today. Let me hand it on to Jim Anderson.
Yes, this is Jim Anderson. Sorry about the chipmunk. And I'm with Citizens for Conservation, and I sit on the steering committee. And I will send it over to, I can't see anybody else. Let's see. How about Ted Hafner?
Morning, everybody. Ted Hafner. I chair the Climate Committee, and I will send it over to Danny.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danny Aboud. I'm the Director of Community Programs and Partnerships for Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods, and I am co-chairing the Jedi Roadmap Committee with Raquel. And I will pass it. Oh gosh, I'm not sure everyone who has or hasn't gone at this point. I'm not sure. Emma, I saw you raise your hand. I'll pass it to you.
Thanks so much, Danny. Hi, everybody. I'm Emma. I am also with Public Communications, working with Beth and Sharon and the rest of the team on some messaging. I am so grateful to be here. I will pass it on to Bill Miller.
Yeah, hi everyone. Let's see, turn my camera on. Yeah, hi, Bill Miller. I'm just attending. I'm I guess it's the Connecting People with Nature Committee, and currently chair the board for TNC Illinois. And I'm sorry I came in, so I'm not sure who hasn't been introduced. Victoria, have you?
I have, but thank you. I will pass it over to Cherie Fisher.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cherie Fisher. I work in the research division of the U.S. Forest Service, and I am the chair of the planning committee for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Congress. Thank you, Victoria, and I will pass it to Rebecca Judd.
Hi, thanks, Cherie. Rebecca Judd with the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation. I see that Chris Kraus just joined, so I will pass it over to him.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Kraus. I'm the executive director at Shirley Hines Land Trust. And I will pass it on to, I'm just joining, I apologize. Danielle.
I'll jump in on that as Daniel Suarez. Nice to see you. Good morning, everybody. And I'm Daniel Suarez with Audubon Great Lakes, also former steering committee member and co-chair of the Chicago Wilderness Ag team. I'll send it over to my buddy, Maggie Solis.
Good morning. I'm Maggie Solis with the Kane DuPage Soil and Water Conservation District, also secretary of the Association for Illinois Soil and Water Conservation Districts. I will then pass it on to Mark Johnson.
Hi, Mark Johnston. I'm with Field Museum. I work on the development of CW Hub. I'll pass it on to Andrea.
Hi, Andrea Kramer at Chicago Botanic Garden. I'm the Director of Restoration Ecology and a conservation scientist here. Also a team member on the Increasing Equitable Access to Nature. And with Kelly Larson, who I'll tag next, we're kind of taking on representing the Botanic Garden at the executive committee level for Greg Mueller. So tag Kelly.
Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here. My name is Kelly Larson, and I work with the Windy City Harvest Urban Agriculture Training Program, the Chicago Botanic Garden, and I'm going to pass the torch to Emily Kenny.
Hello, my name is Emily Kenny. I am the Volunteer Services Supervisor for the Forest Preserve District of Will County, and I cannot see anybody else on the list. So if someone else can jump in who has their hand raised, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is Patty Vitt. I'm with the Lake County Forest Preserve District, and I serve on the Stewarding Healthy Landscapes team, and I will pass it along to Amy Dahl.
I'm Amy Dahl. I'm the Director of Friends of Illinois Nature Preserves. And sorry, I can't see either anybody who has their hand raised that's left. So go ahead and jump in.
Actually, Pat Charleboy from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. Do you want to go ahead?
I'll go. This is Leslie Thompson from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant at Purdue University Northwest.
And I believe, is there anybody else left? I think we've gone around the room here. So great to have everybody with us this morning. This is such an amazing group with representation from new organizations to those that have been with us a while, to new faces and those that have also been. So this is just great to see, and just so thankful to have everybody here today. And this is going to be an exciting meeting. There's a lot of great work that's going forward, and obviously a lot that's going to be launching upcoming at the early part of next month with the Conservation Congress. And so, but we're going to start off, we're going to take care of the routine business that we need to do, and that would be to start off with the approval of the agenda for today's meeting. If I could have a motion to approve.
I make a motion, Daniel.
Daniel, thank you so much. Do we have a second?
Second, Ralph Schultz. Second.
Second by Ralph Schultz. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, motion is approved. We'll next move on to the consent agenda and what you have in front of you or in your packet if you had time to read. And we do the consent agenda just to move through this portion of the meeting, taking care of business so we can spend time on conversational discussion-based items. If there's anything that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda, once I take a motion in a second, then we can move forward. Well, let me take, anybody want to have anything removed from the consent agenda first? On the consent agenda, we have the treasurer's report for July, August, September, which is our third quarter of this fiscal year. We're also accepting an amendment for June. Our Friends of the Forest Preserve, our individual that worked through this was on a leave of absence, and we did have some journal adjustment that we made to the June report. So that's been included. We also then have our executive council meetings prepared by our secretary, Nathaniel. Great job on that for July 20th when we were all back together. And then the steering committee has worked to put together our budget, which begins on January 1st for the upcoming year. And we had presented this back to the council in draft form during our summer meeting in July. There were a few tweaks that were made to the budget from last time on the field trips that are going to be part of Congress based on transportation expenses. Moving some of the sponsorship for the field trips and cafes to some hopefully philanthropy support for this initiative work. And basically that's a summary of the changes from our summer draft budget. So with that being said, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
This is Maggie, so moved.
Maggie, thank you. Do I have a second?
Amy, second.
Amy, thank you. Any discussion on any of the items before we vote? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed, nay. Okay, the consent agenda as presented is approved. All right, it is now my pleasure to this long-awaited work. And to begin with, I want to thank Public Communications, Sharon and her team for their leadership in working this as we went through a very accelerated and ambitious progress when they set out to take on this task for us. And also to our communications working group that lent their time and thoughts to help frame this and just to kind of check in and work with them throughout the process. So Sharon, thank you so much. And we're excited to have you share this with everyone.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and it's amazing to see so many people in the room and a lot of familiar faces. We've been working with some folks here that are on the steering committee or have volunteered for the working group, and we've done a lot of work with the goal team leaders. Is it okay if I share my screen? Okay. Okay. Now you probably all at this point have received the marketing communication strategy. If you haven't, it will be coming your way. It's a very thick document, so we're not going to spend a ton of time going through that huge document, but we will hit on some of the key highlights and the key takeaways from it. And then today we're also going to share some refreshed logo that we put together, the creative for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, and our recommendations for core target audience, key messaging, information hierarchy, to really help you hit those key objectives that were set forth for us. The problems that we were solving for when we went into this was we want to increase partner engagement. We want to expand partnerships across a lot of demographics, the 4-state region, getting younger, more diverse folks engaged across the region so that we can really achieve these ambitious goals that are set forth, and really looking at leveraging that green vision and using that as a launch pad to just get enthusiasm and momentum around Chicago Wilderness Alliance. So that was the lay of the land and what we were set out to develop and the problem solve for. And that's what you'll see in that strategy. And we'll lay out some of our recommendations and creative to do that. And of course, the Green Vision Initiative creative, you will share our thinking behind it. An overview of the message framework. That's another big document that's probably in your inbox or in a file you have access to. We worked really closely with the goal team leads to help develop a message framework for each one of those goal teams to help articulate what they're doing, how they're doing it, who they need to get involved, who is involved, and how we're going to achieve these goals. And then a creative visualization of the hub, working with the marks at Field Museum, and next steps. And of course, we'll have any questions or feedback. So really looking at just a brief overview and review. We met with, I believe, this whole group or a lot of folks on this when we were first getting started and going through the research and discovery phase and giving our initial assessments. We won't spend a lot of time on what we were seeing as here's what the problems and challenges we're solving for with the communication, but we do lay that out in the plan. Some key takeaways for motivating factors and obstacles to participation. This was really critical for us to understand why people are participating and why they may not be. And so you saw some surveys go out throughout the partnership and to help us gain some insights from those who are actively involved in the organization. And we really were excited by some of the feedback, and I'll tell you why, because of the people who cared enough about Chicago Wilderness Alliance to participate in something like a survey, which is a level of participation. About 60% or so of them didn't do any other kind of deeper participation. They weren't involved in any working groups or on any teams. And so this was really important for us because they cared enough to participate and tell us their opinion, and they gave us some insights into why they weren't participating more deeply. So we share some of those insights in that plan. But the key highlights here are the motivating factors for people to be engaged are really that shared passion and purpose for conservation of biodiversity and climate resiliency in this region that we live in. People that want to collaborate and network with other people working toward that shared passion, and learning and professional growth. These were the key motivating factors to be involved. Some of the key obstacles to involvement involved time commitment or perception of time commitment. But other things were not knowing what that looked like, what the opportunities were, what are some roles and responsibilities. Do I have the right skills that you need or you're looking for? Or I've just never been invited. These were some of the things that I'm like, we can solve for that in communications. So those are some of the obstacles that we saw, and we know that those are things that we can solve for. So we kind of list out what those challenges are, what those obstacles are, and then what you see in that corresponding plan, those 10 objectives and strategies involved with them are really solving for those challenges and leaning into the motivating factors. Now, I will point out, and what we think from our perspective as communications professionals, some really important limitations and challenges to really consider are, your resources to do communications and marketing. This isn't a one and done, here's your plan and everything's solved for from here on out. This is an ongoing work. Everyone who works in any organization knows that communications is a daily job. How is that going to happen effectively? And what are the resources available to Chicago Wilderness Alliance to do that effectively on an ongoing basis? And there's no answers for that one. So that's something that has to be solved and figured out. We give some strategies and some recommendations of how you might work to solve for that and implement that, but we do want to bring that to the forefront. There are some that has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with the resource and platform. So we really looked at some of the marketing tools that are currently being used, and there are some limiting factors, and we highlight those. So those are things to consider when you really look at leveling up what you're going to do, how you're going to increase that brand awareness, go out prospecting new partnerships, in recruiting new partners, engaging them more deeply, and knowing that marketing and communications is a big part of that. There are some marketing tools and resources that you'll want that you currently don't have access to, or the ones you're using are really limited. So that is also laid out in that plan. Now, we were building the plane while flying it, and we were working on a really tight deadline to figure all of this out and then build the tools that you could start implementing in time for the Conservation Congress. So some of the strategies, I put 10 here, I think it's closer to a dozen at this point, but some of the strategies that our team has been actually activating while we've been building the plan are developing new logo creative. I think it's important here to just set the stage of understanding that we were not brought in to do a rebranding for Chicago Wilderness. That wasn't the ask, it wasn't the intent, and it's not something we necessarily think you should be doing. However, we will say that we do think there could be some potential limiting factors with the name Chicago Wilderness, because obviously it sounds like it's a Chicago organization, and that could cause some you have to work a little harder to engage folks in Indiana and Wisconsin and Michigan. So we weren't here to really analyze the name and if you needed the full rebranding, but we knew that there were some opportunities to refine that brand and help solve for some of those potential limitations. We have developed those Green Vision Initiative, a brand creative suite and brand guidelines. We've written a message framework for the Green Vision, and we've done a message refresh for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, as well as really looked at the website and provided some website refinement recommendations and some messaging recommendations there. We did a creative mock-up for the hub, and we also have done some additional graphic materials and some brand materials like branded templates for PowerPoint decks, and a new graphic for the cafe series, since that's something you're offering all of the time, and we provide a refresh. So we'll start with the logo concept that we'd like to bring forward. One of the key things that we think we're really missing from the current logo is alliance. It really helps people understand that you are a network of people and you're not just a place. And we also saw an opportunity when we could refresh that logo creative to build a place of your location and where you work, and how do we expand that out so it doesn't feel so Chicago, but more for state region. So we know you use this visual graphic of the region around the lake, and we use different colors because we wanted to really help people understand that this is for a state. So we use a different color for each state. People aren't great with geography. If we just did this all in green, a lot of people wouldn't know that's not just the Chicago region in Illinois. So this helps, we hope, reiterate that Chicago Wilderness Alliance is an alliance of people working in the 4-state region. And then our messaging recommendations really emphasize that. The other thing that we noticed and we outlined in some of our brand communication analysis was it seemed to be the brand was communicating to everyone all the time, didn't seem targeted in its approach. And so that can be confusing. People may not know who you're targeting or what they're supposed to do with that information. It seemed very clear to us, and in the survey responses from those who participated, your core audience is conservation practitioners, and that's who you're going to need to engage, to be involved in teams, to achieve the objectives you want to achieve in these ambitious goals. So communications should really be targeted toward the conservation practitioner. And we provide our definition of what a conservation practitioner is. It is diverse specialties. It's a lot of different people working in different ways, but all in that shared space. we saw the brand attributes. Some of them are very real and very forward facing, and some of them are more aspirational or help solve for some of what could be perception challenges that we outline in the plan. But these are the core brand attributes we think you are and should be elevated through all types of communications. This collaborative, purpose-driven, committed professionals. I want to highlight the active. There's a perception that maybe that you're not as active. You're networking, you're talking a lot, but maybe there's not a lot of action. This is not a perception that we want people to have, and there's a lot of goals to achieve and a lot of work that's underway, and there's a lot of actions being taken. So how do we bring that to the forefront, emphasize that action? And we want it to be very welcoming. And so that welcoming nature should be infused through everything you do, every interaction you have, as you're really trying to engage new partners to become involved. And you really want diverse voices and diverse participants as part of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance. We say all this recognizing there are a lot of secondary audiences. Some of the goal groups are going to be working with their core audience. That could be for the agriculture team. It could be farmers and people in agriculture. That's their core audience. But for Chicago Wilderness, that's a secondary audience. So having these segmented approaches to communication and really understanding that for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, conservation practitioner is your core audience. That will really help refine how you present your brand, increase awareness about what you're doing, who you want involved, and how they can get involved. So we did some message refinements that is very targeted and tailored toward conservation practitioners. And it really helps we kind of rewrite a little bit or refresh and refine, how you communicate, who you are and what you do and where you work. When we look at your website, which is a key place where people get information, especially if they're just finding out about you, especially if they're intrigued and want to learn a little more, we really want your website to be a place that shares your brand attributes, that speaks clearly and communicates clearly who you're trying to attract, what you offer, why that's a valuable offer, and plays up those motivating factors for participation, which again, we know are that shared purpose, our collaboration, networking, learning, and growing together. So when we look at that current layout where you're at, it's kind of all jumbled together. The other thing we wanted to point out is that you have this member portal that takes up a huge amount of space on your website. The website service that you're using, the platform you're using, really seems to be built with the primary purpose of exclusivity. It's a site that's designed for organizations that are providing a paywall, that are providing content only to an exclusive group of people who are paying for the access. Now, that may have been where things were at years and years ago for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, but based on your current objectives, you're working toward greater inclusivity. So this platform may not be your best approach. And at the very least, we recommend, if you can, getting rid of that portal and that member login on your website. I believe it's defunct, you're not even using it. So it's just taking up a lot of space. It sends the wrong message. And then, of course, there's just a lot of duplication across all these sub-tabs. There's a lot here, and it's not clear for what you want anyone to do. So we are providing some recommendations, and Laura and Elizabeth have received these, which are a messaging refresh and what we recommend as the key communications you want to provide to that conservation practitioner, who you are, what they can do, what they will get from you. And so the top navigation tabs we're recommending is that refreshed about us, who we are, collaborate. These are all the ways that people can collaborate, and it's targeted toward a conservation practitioner. Advocate, this is action. You do a lot of action alerts. You have an advocacy sub-tab. Let's pull that up to the top and make that a core part of who you are. You're collaborating, you're active, You're a place for learning and growing. And that's where you can have the subtabs for all those opportunities, whether it's the Congress or it's the Cafe series, or it's other types of resources and publications. Equity and culture. You have a lot of resources that are being provided for your partners that are about this. And we know that growing and increasing diversity and really tackling some of the access to nature challenges is such a priority for your organization. So instead of burying this under as a sub-tab under something else, we're saying put it at the forefront, make it a top navigation tab, and then make the resources that are available, the workshops that are available, really easy for people to find. And then the awards and recognition. We know that the Force for Nature awards and your accreditation programs, those are also really important programs for your organization. They're very targeted toward conservation practitioners. Again, move those to a top tab. So it's very clear when someone comes to your site that this is for a conservation practitioner, and here's why this is a great organization to engage with. This is how it could look within the current platform. Now you'll see at the very top, the main nav, we have the Green Vision Initiative. That is a direct link to the hub. And so you could either put that as a top navigation with the others or as that top main. And that's either one I think would be fine, but what we suggest is that it's up there very high in the priority, top of fold, easy to find, and that's where people are sent. There's not multiple places of different types of information. We want everyone directed to the hub, which should always have the most current information. And then we're cleaning up all the sub-tabs, making it very clear, what you're offering and how to get involved, who it's for. So that's, and of course you see that there's no member portal here. We believe we've lifted up the hood behind the scenes on your current platform. It appears that you should be able to remove that or hide that, but we haven't had enough time to do a lot of behind the scenes work on that. But it's our recommendation that that's not part of your public facing website. Some of the messaging refinements that we're recommending to remove confusion, to increase brand awareness and perception and understanding. There is a lot of inconsistencies of language use, and this is cultural and this is a holdover, and some people say one thing and some people say something else. And this kind of change is going to take time and a reiteration of new language. And for the most part, there's not too much of it. But we do recommend that that we stop using the word members or member/partners. Laura shared a lot of evidence that's come out through the JEDI working groups and other reasons why there is a shift toward partners. And so with that in mind, we would just recommend with your brand launch, with your refresh, just discontinue, make a hard stop on these references to members. They're partners. We also saw the same thing with the inconsistent terminology around collaborative groups. There's committees, there's subcommittees, there's task force, there's working groups, there's teams. This is very confusing for somebody who's new to your organization coming in. Our goal, a problem we're trying to solve for, is to bring more new people in. So we need to solve for some things that could just create confusion. And when there isn't a way to articulate what's the difference between these things, then I think that what we just need to do is have a consistent term that is collaborative in nature and welcoming. So we think the term teams really serves that purpose. So it's going to take time for people to change their ways and the words they're used to using, but we strongly recommend, and especially to be reinforced through any official communications that come out from Chicago Wilderness Alliance, whether it's a newsletter or a website or an invitation, anything, that the terminology is teams moving forward. So we have gone through and done, and I hope we didn't miss any references through that message framework for the Green Vision Initiative and made those updates. So you will see moving forward that we reference everything as a team. The other thing that we've noticed in some communications, and we really caution and would like everyone to be conscientious of moving forward, is an Illinois bias. We saw it in some of the numbers or some of the prioritization of information that was just very biased toward Illinois. And that's because maybe you have more partners working in Illinois. There's more information about work happening in Illinois, but it is something that could feel unwelcoming to somebody in Wisconsin or Indiana or Michigan, where they may not feel this is relevant for them. So be very conscientious about communications to ensure that you're trying to minimize a bias toward Illinois. And then just from an ease of use, excessive links on the website, we strongly encourage steering away from that. Clear, concise descriptions and clear call to actions, and not a lot of linking to different pages to get information for things. And with lots of links, there's also potential for old information to not be caught and still have links, or broken links, which we found a lot of both of those things on the website. And then finally, we want to move from Green Vision as a standalone to Green Vision Initiative, and we're going to get into why we're making that recommendation. So we were looking at the current name, and our team really struggled with the Green Vision as a name. It felt vague. It doesn't suggest action. That's a perception we're trying to solve for, is that lack of action. And then we actually had someone on one of the groups who's a water person said, well, where does water fit into that? And we know that water is so essential to so much of the work that you do. And I thought, well, is that now a bias towards land? And so we asked you. So you probably received a survey, and maybe you participated. We had 31 people participate and weigh in. We were really looking at whether we changed the name altogether to something that was more targeted and specific. Could this be, a climate resiliency initiative? What do all these things ladder up to? Is it biodiversity? We gave 8 different name modifications. We also just said, option of leave it alone, don't touch it, and an option of I hate all your ideas, none of these. And we had a couple of those on both sides. But for the most part, the key thing we saw is only 3 people really said Green Vision alone, leave it alone, don't touch it. That's what we want. So we thought, okay, there's some receptiveness to modifying this in some way. And we gave some options for how we might do that. In the end, the idea that really rose to the surface was, can we have Green Vision and then blank? Can we add an action word to Green Vision that solves for this? And that was really neck and neck with changing the name altogether. We decided to go with that option primarily because Green Vision has been socialized so much in this organization. And we think it would be maybe more confusing to suddenly make a hard stop talking about it and just start calling it something else. And we just didn't know whether the benefit of that would outweigh, the challenges of that. So we decided that Green Vision Initiative really helps demonstrate there's something to it, there's work being done in it, and it invites you to learn more. It really pulls it in and says, I want to find out more. Now, we still have the bias with water. Is that still a problem? So our designer, Michelle, really took that to heart and incorporated this water droplet look to the Green Vision Initiative's logo to try to fold water in and make it a part of everything. So these are the different iterations of the Green Vision Initiative logo and graphics. This is the suite. There's a wheel, there's a tree, and then there's just the icons, the individual icons that you can pull out for each one of these. And then we have the message framework for each one of these goals. We have an overarching message. What is the Green Vision Initiative? What does all of this ladder up to, and why are we doing it? Everybody needs an elevator pitch. You want to be able to really clearly articulate what you're doing and why. And then when you're wanting to engage people to understand your specific goals and what you're going to achieve, we crafted that framework with each one follows a template. They're all very much the same in the template of, we want a little elevator pitch. What is it? What is the goal you're achieving? And then how do you build in those motivating factors? That shared purpose, that motivation, that urgency. So what motivates us is articulated in a message for each one of these goals, why it matters, and then how are you going to achieve it? It's all well and good to have a big idea, but how do you articulate that these are some of the ways that we're going to achieve this ambitious goal? And guess what? We've been successful in the past. So the what have we accomplished so far really helps to mitigate this idea of a lot of talk and no action. It emphasizes, look, we've done this before. We've achieved a lot. This is a winning team. Here's your motivating reason to be involved. And the most important part, very specifically how to get involved. What we heard from people is one of the reasons they don't know what is involved. They don't know what the roles are. They don't know whether they have the right skills. They've never been invited, right? That's the impression they have. So we want to really clearly articulate how to get involved and what that looks like. And we strongly recommend that there is a diversity of opportunity for participation. Not everybody is going to be able to make a call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday every other week, right? There could be reasons that people can't do some of those things. And if that suddenly excludes them, then that's why you're not going to have participation. So every goal group, every opportunity within Chicago Wilderness should be building in different ways that people can participate based on different schedules, different amount of time, and different, levels of desire of participation. Sometimes people maybe just want to start in a little bit and see how it feels before they want to get more deeply invested and invest more time and energy and effort. So really look at building out those opportunities. And we tried to do so with the goal teams and articulate that. And there's probably still more work to do on that front. And then this is our brand visualization, incorporating that look and feel, those icons onto what is currently the CW Hub. And we've worked and shared this out with Mark Johnson and Mark Bowman. And we peeked under the hood with the system they're using, the platform they're using, and this should be something that they can implement with the tools they have at their disposal. And unless they chime in and tell me otherwise today, our last communication was, we do think this is possible. It's just a matter of time on can we get this accomplished by Congress? And I think that might still be up for debate, but the goal would be that we have this site with the new brand and look and feel and the message framework incorporated by launch. And then this is just a visualization of what one of those goal groups would look like. I'll say that the managing healthy landscapes, goal 1, is the most extensive of the message frameworks that we have. And so what we did was we kind of created this accordion type style of, a drop down menu. So you don't just have this long rolling forever web page. You can tap on, okay, what are some of these strategies with a little paragraph, a little blurb of what it is, and here's what we've accomplished. But up front and center are 2 things that are most important from what we understand and what we're encouraging is top of fold, we call that. It's how to get involved. We want to say get involved, and we want to let people know how to get involved in that goal. We have that elevator pitch. We have that goal really clearly articulated. And then of course the go-to tools, because there's the mapping tools, there's all the tools. And once somebody's involved in the hub and they're involved in a group and they know, we don't want it to be hard for them to find the tools they need. So we're serving 2 purposes here. It's for those who are already deeply engaged, they can click that button and go right to the tools. Or for somebody who's new and wanting to get more information about what this is and what it might be to get involved, there's the get involved. So that's the design recommendation that the marks have. And this is in that plan too. So I know it's really hard to look on the screen and see it, but that is in the big plan deck that you have. And then for the get involved, for the groups that gave us very specific people, and there was lots of different teams working, we have under that get involved, the invasive species team, the grassland, shrubland, birds team, the wildlife species management team, and who to contact. So we make it really clear. These are the different teams, and again, we can continue to build out what that involvement looks like and what the skills are that you're looking for, so people know that if they have what you're looking for. So the other brand assets that we have been developing and will be prepared if this committee decides to give it a go ahead and say, yes, we accept the brand that you're sharing. We have some PowerPoint branded decks that we'll have available today to turn over. And we've created two. One of them is the generic for Chicago Wilderness Alliance, which incorporates the new logo and provides that brand guidelines. We have the brand guidelines for you with the colors and everything else. But then we built a PowerPoint template that can be used then to create some consistencies in look. So when you're sharing out different presentations to whatever groups or organizations you might be sharing out a presentation to, there's a template. And then we have the same thing for the Green Vision initiatives. And so we would encourage the goal team leaders to be using this branded deck so that, again, the consistency of the look, the feel, the polish, it just provides that, credibility that we're all talking from the same organization, all representing the same organization. And then one of the graphics that we created, and it's mostly because, as you saw in the language, we'd like to stop using the CW, that's a television network. I think that, everybody that's been involved in Chicago Wilderness for a long time might immediately know CW means Chicago Wilderness, but for new people, we'd really encourage the brand of Chicago Wilderness Alliance, just for increasing that brand awareness and not shortening it to CW. And so this is just a cleaner version of what's currently being used to promote the CW cafes. And it just gives sort of a reference point for Laura and Maria and those who are doing communications of how you can sort of bring that to life in a very simple and clean way, whether that's Congress or whether it's another series, but just a little bit cleaner look. The other thing is that there's limited photos. This is one of the challenges that's called out in the plan, is there is not a deep photo archive and library available to Chicago Wilderness Alliance, and we really would love you to help solve for that. People are a huge part of who you are, and your access to good people photos is really limited. So that's something, and we provide some strategies in that plan for how you can maybe try to solve for that. But that is one thing that we would encourage. The more shots of people, diversity of people doing the passionate work that they're doing, people in the field, people, with their hands getting dirty, whatever that is, out in nature, those types of imagery that you could use would be really valuable. That wraps up. Hopefully I didn't go too long, but the full list of deliverables is here. These are all, many of them you've already received, but what we're going to do is put them into a Dropbox, send that link over to Laura and Elizabeth, and make available as soon as we get approval that you're good with these recommendations and these creative. But it'll all be in there for you with that strategy, framework, creative, brand guidelines. And that is it. Happy to take any questions that anyone might have. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can see people.
Thank you, Sharon. So again, great job in the presentation, very comprehensive, and the materials are very detailed. Before we move to take an action on this, while we have any questions or thoughts as this was being presented that we need clarification on, or would like to ask the group? Kathy, please.
Yeah, thank you. That is phenomenal. I just really, really love the clarity you're providing. And I wrote something in chat, but I have one suggestion for even clarifying it further. And I've mentioned this to Beth, but I think it would be stronger if we called it Green Vision Initiative not plural. And then the goal groups under that are all working together toward that great green initiative. You know, I feel like the plural sort of weakens it a little, but if we do choose to keep the plural, then I think the 7 classes, the 7 goal groups should be changed to initiatives. That's all. I think it would clarify it, but personally, I think dropping the S would make it stronger and then keep the goal groups. It's my opinion. Thank you. It's fabulous all the way around.
I would love any other thoughts on that, because we had that internal debate among our team, and I was initially with Kathy on that, and then I got talked into going the other way, and then I started leaning into the other way because it is more than one initiative. There are multiple initiatives. Each one of these goals is an initiative, and there's multiple strategies within, you know, the goal. So it does seem like it's not a singular, but rather a plural. So I don't know. It is one of those things that I think you could make a justification for either way on this. But to your point, are we creating an inconsistency between goals and initiatives? They are, you know, a synonym of themselves, right? But do we just move away from goals and just talk about them as the initiative? And so that's something, I think that's an important question.
Thank you for thinking it through. I appreciate that feedback.
Thank you. And we will revisit that before, and then I'll come back and circle back to these items. I'm going to park them here. Rebecca, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sharon. This is really helpful. I noticed in the plan deck that that you all raised a really good point about how that there may remain some confusion or lack of clarity around whether the green vision initiatives or goals are the kind of the sole organizational priorities of the Alliance. And I just wonder if whether the Alliance needs to grapple with that, because I think that's an overarching foundational issue that probably needs to be resolved in order to make, I think, clarity and consistency around some of the website redesign, that's only going to work if it goes hand in hand with understanding around what the sole focus or top line goals of the Alliance is in the first place.
Thank you for raising that, Rebecca. It is something we struggled with and really didn't have a good, clear outcome for it. It's laid out in that plan. Usually we're building communications and marketing strategies that are centered around a business, an organizational strategic plan. And that's what we went into this thinking, that the Green Vision initiatives were your organizational strategic plan, and that all of these measurable goals were laddering up. And then we were told, well, no, there's still these other things that don't fit into it. Now, we know there's the awards programs and others, but it was, so we don't think that everything and all things need to fall into Green Vision initiatives, but having that clarity, are there going to be working teams? Are there going to be teams that are doing things that are not in some way working and helping in support of some of these measurable goals? And if so, where do those fall? Those are questions that still kind of are lingering and hanging out there. We know that there's obviously going to be some teams that are collaborating to put together some of your learning resources, and that's all well and good, and that we can prioritize in communications. But it's a question of, do the species management team or do some of these other teams, do they fall under one of these initiatives as part of a laddering up to a measurable goal? There was a lack of clarity in there, and thank you for raising that. We couldn't answer that for you. I think this is among the leadership of Chicago Wilderness to grapple.
Thank you. Great conversation, Rebecca. Thank you for bringing that forward. All important. Any other questions or thoughts? Looking for hands. So let's circle back on the concept that was volleyed back and forth by the PCI and the working group on goals and initiatives, or initiative and then initiatives. Where do we want to land with that? Because I'm hopeful today that we can get a vote of support so we can advance this and begin that process of infusing this new branding into, if everybody's so willing, into all our materials for the Congress and going forward. So how would we like, do we want to further conversation, or does someone, we start off with moving with what has been presented as the recommendation, since that's the recommendation on the floor, I guess, that's been presented to us, and then I'm open either way. So we don't need to be full official with Robert's rules here. So how do we want to handle that? John Ragnar?
Yeah, I could go either way on the top line, whether we call it an initiative or initiatives. And Sharon, I appreciate how you batted this back and forth internally and arrived at one, but probably not feeling really strongly about it necessarily. So, and Kathy, thanks for that thought. It does seem to me to be a bit more powerful if we call it a grand initiative, acknowledging within it there are many other smaller or components to that bigger initiative. I do really like the idea of changing our goals to initiatives. And I think the sooner the better, because that sort of reinforces that action orientation around all of those things. It's just not something we want to strive for. It's something we're going to do. So I really like that idea a lot. So that's all I have.
Thank you, John. Jim, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing that John said, so I lowered my hand. But I really do like the concept of, if we're going to have this big tag that's our opening line that talks about initiative, I think we should change our goals to initiatives. And then those, one of the other discussions we had when PCI presented it to the communication working group, you know, we really want to try to think about each one of those goals are actually going to be a team of people working. And so I think we came to an agreement that and Chicago Wilderness started out with a lot of teams. And so I think it's good to maybe ground ourselves again. So each one of those initiatives are a team. And so I just wanted to add that.
Okay, so we've had any other thoughts of anything else? Otherwise, I would take a motion. Victoria.
Thank you. Yes, I think it would be nice to change the name goal or the term goal to initiative. But if we do that, I think it would be more clear if it were Green Vision initiatives, plural. So
Right.
that when folks dive deeper, they are looking at each individual initiative.
I'm reading Beth. Beth is a former editor of the Chicago Tribune, and I can read in her eyes her grammar police is like going crazy, and totally aligning with what Victoria just said there. So I'm going to back that one up. If we decide to change goals to initiative, then we should have overarching initiatives.
Agreed, 100%.
Okay, so we've got concurrence on that. Cherie, you have your hand up.
Thanks. I agree on that. I think keep the S because the initiatives sounds flexible and it sounds like it encompasses a lot of different things, which it does, where initiative sounds rigid to me. And then maybe the teams could be called GVI action teams or something like that. Because teams is still a good, helpful word.
Great, thank you for that. Emily, your hand is up.
Yes, I also am in agreement with the initiatives and then making the goals making a singular initiative.
Okay. So would someone be willing, if there's other conversation here with our agenda today, be willing to move forward with accepting the recommendations from PCI and the communications group with the change of Green Vision initiatives, plural, and removing goal to initiatives?
I would make that motion to move that forward and accept the work from PCI.
Yes, and I second.
Kathy second. Okay, any other further discussion on this? Okay, we'll take a vote. Thank you. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Woohoo! Nay? Nay, okay, awesome. Yay, this is a time for celebration. This is great. This is exciting. This helps the launch and consistency, and we will get the style guides and all this stuff out. So we all begin speaking in this new language, and we will begin the work behind the scenes. And of course, Sharon and team, great effort. Definitely sometimes a lot of different parts here and being sensitive to what we're trying to achieve. And also I do respect the great back and forth and of our initiatives. And of one of the things too, although we have 7 and they're not in any particular order or priority, even though they're the numbers are easily, you know, in general that we're working towards that. But I think as a leadership and as we move forward, we'll continue to work in action to accomplish these very amazing initiatives that make us who we are. So thank you so much. Okay.
Fabulous. Elizabeth, can I just say
Please.
I'm seeing some of the questions in the chat. Mark Bowman asked about the boundaries, and I believe that what you're referencing is what we have in the logo. So I'd like to connect with you and connect Michelle, our designer, with you so we can verify or make adjustments to the design. So we all feel really comfortable that those boundaries are well represented. And then what we'll do next is go through and that message framework, and we will update the reference to goal from goals to initiative and make sure that's all cleaned up. And then we will send over those final documents so you can delete anything you've received to date so we don't have old information circulating about, please. And then you'll have all of those updated final deliverables from us. That will not be today, but we will aim to get that to you hopefully by the end of next week or the end of this week or early next, depending on how many changes, if we have to do some design tweaks. So that's the timeline there, and just a huge thank you for this. Our team is very excited, and it's been an honor working with this amazing group of professionals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And phenomenal work. Laura behind is the things where we already got a change and it's in motion already. So Brandon, take away our Green Vision Initiatives update. Not the new template yet, but we've got the initiatives component to it. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm going to go ahead and share my deck. And I think I just successfully updated all of the goal team references to initiative team references in my deck. But if I missed one, so be it. I did it really fast just now. So I'm going to go ahead and share here. I'm also going to try to be fairly brief and fairly quick to buy us back a little bit of time. I know there's a lot we need to talk about today, particularly getting ready for Congress and updating that. So I'm going to be fairly swift as I go through my update. I know that those of you who are members of the steering committee did see a version of this at the most recent steering committee meeting, but there are 5 pages of notes to go along with this that we'll share out in the minutes, but I will be relatively brief here. And just a really quick word of congratulations to PCI for amazing work. Okay, let's jump in. So a quick overview since the last time that I was talking to the Executive Council. Bold Bison has been meeting with each of the initiative team leads. We've also met with the Hub team, not working group, the Jedi team, not working group. And all of that work in sort of thinking about sort of where we need to focus, what the work is for, this period looking, between now and next summer, is using Congress as a vehicle for focusing that work. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today will reference Congress, and that will queue up our fuller update of Congress that we're getting from Cherie later on. I want to share a few high-level observations, to sort of contextualize sort of what we're seeing and the thinking as, the initiative team sort of think about Congress and think about sort of that as an opportunity. One thing I do want to draw everyone's attention to is a disconnect, articulated in many different ways between the resources, time, human, financial, and capital, and the need in terms of the work. And that's, the work writ large and sort of the efforts of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance writ large. So that is why we want to focus on some very kind of movable, achievable wins over the next 6 to 8 months. Understanding that, each of the initiative teams, in the goals that they've laid out, have lots of things that they want to do, lots of things that they're working toward. But what we really wanted to do is sort of isolate 1 or 2 kind of things that can move forward using Congress as sort of that. Think about it this way. It's like the work is a satellite, sent from CWA, around. It's boomeranging off the gravity of the sun, and it's heading out into the solar system. And so Congress is that sun. It is that sort of opportunity to kind of reinvigorate, and that's why we're really focused on it. Each of the initiative teams are at different levels. We've talked about that a bit before with this group, but the work is at different levels, and sort of how the initiative groups are structured are at different levels. And that's just something that is part of it. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just a reality. And some of the initiative teams are structurally misaligned to the work of a volunteer alliance. So what I mean by that is that there's a lot of some of the initiative teams have a lot of kind of substructure and sort of a lot of different sort of nodes and areas that they're working in. But at the end of the day, with some of the initiative teams, there's only 1 or 2 people who are kind of really engaged in moving that work forward. And so there's a little bit of a misalignment between sort of those folks who are kind of, really pushing the work forward, and those who want to be involved, but maybe not have the time or capacity to be as involved as potentially needed in the structure of sort of the work, because it's a volunteer alliance. And that brings me to this next really, really important point. I will talk about this at every meeting you see me at, as long as you have me to talk at a meeting. And that is, and I know a lot of you are thinking about this, but I cannot implore the leadership of organizations and agencies enough to make sure that your staff understands that the work of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance is also the work of your agencies, of your organizations. It is not over and above, it is not on top of it. For instance, in thinking about and inviting folks to participate in panels or as MCs or whatnot at Congress, some of the things we got was like, oh, I need to make sure I can take the afternoon off. And those are some folks who are actually working in your organizations who still think like, oh, if I'm going to do this thing, I need to take personal time to go and do this thing, as opposed to it being understood in the culture of your organizations that this is part of the work of the organization. And that's all I'll say about that at the moment, but it is super important that that permeates every level, that the work of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance is your work and is your staff and employees' work. And then this one, I'm lifting up sort of in the full written out version of it in the deck, because it was something that sort of struck some of the steering committee members at our last meeting when we talked about it, and really kind of thinking about the work of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance is identifying the needs, is a place to coordinate the work of everyone across the region, and sort of thinking about it in terms of that the special magic of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance is because it brings all of these incredibly smart, intelligent, capable, and empathetic people together, perceptive people together, sort of doing that work beyond sort of what one individual agency or organization can do. But sometimes that doesn't mean that Chicago Wilderness itself needs to, step in and do all of the work. Sometimes it needs to be that sort of coordinator. And that's a lot of sort of what we've been talking about in the initiative teams as we're thinking about Congress and the work at the moment. So like I said, the focus of where we're at is that we're focusing on sort of one, maybe two kind of achievable, clear goal or activity that can be perceived as sort of a demonstrable win or clear forward movement within the next 6 to 8 months. And of course, very much using Congress as sort of the key to that. And really underscoring, I'm going to lean into this in a moment in the next slide, that a voluntary network alliance, the work that moves forward is the work that has energy around it. So for some of the conversations with some of the initiative team leads, it has been clear, like, oh, I'm stressed about all of these 17 things. But this one goal, this one piece of the work is what has a lot of energy, super excited to move that forward. So what we're doing is like, okay, how do we use Congress? How do we use this moment? How do we use connections to other activities sort of in the region that people are talking about to move that piece that you are excited and ready to move forward? So that's very much the tactic that we are taking. So following that energy, and this is just a very brief kind of looking at some of the initiative teams and and then also the Hub and Jedi Roadmap teams. If there are some that are not on here in terms of the initiatives, is partly because we haven't landed that second or third meeting to really talk it through, but we are talking about it in terms of what we're presenting at Congress. So if you see that you're missing on here, know that I'm coming for you in the next week to really hammer out what are we talking about at Congress. But for managing healthy landscapes, there is a lot of energy around a cooperative weed management area. There will be more detail on this in the notes that we provide out after this meeting. But what's really exciting about that energy around that idea of a cooperative weed management area is that there is a lot of movement around sort of removal of invasives generally and kind of ramping that work up. So there's a connection to be made between that we are making between the work that the Chicago Region Trees Initiative is doing specifically, the funds they're going after, funds that have been received, and how all of this can tie into larger federal funding coming from the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And a big meeting that's sort of coming in November that CRTI is setting up and wants to have the participation of the Managing Healthy Landscapes initiative team as part of a much bigger conversation that we're putting together. So, there's that energy, it's tied to existing energy and opportunity. So let's connect that together and make something bigger than any sort of one agency or initiative can do. And I'm sort of lingering on that a little bit because it's a really exciting example. And unfortunately, Patty had to go off to another call, but she is obviously Patty Vitt is obviously very sort of connected to that. And also some of the work, the ground level work that the Forest Preserves of Lake County has done too, is also feeding into this opportunity. So there's a lot of exciting movement there connecting to work beyond sort of classically, the Chicago Wilderness Alliance, just the type of stuff we should be doing in terms of where are the opportunities? How can we connect the right people to those opportunities and move things forward around the region? That, in more detail in the notes, that is also the energy around prioritizing green infrastructure, sort of connecting to existing plans, connecting sort of the big thinking of folks in terms of protecting landscapes and where those opportunities are is a big piece of the work in the newly renamed Protecting Landscapes for Biodiversity Conservation initiative team. And, I put maps in there with an exclamation point because that's part of what they're going to be doing at Congress, is having a big map of sort of priorities and opportunities, some of that good work that volunteer Dave Holman has done sort of present at Congress. In taking climate action, again, it's pursuing those opportunities. It's looking at what does it look like to coordinate some of all of the various climate initiatives, kind of look at what are some of these federal funding opportunities, and then thinking about the climate action plan for nature and how that needs to be potentially beefed up, or how it can be revised or refreshed to really be poised to take advantage of some of this money that's coming down. in protecting healthy water. Looking for connections within the Chicago Wilderness Alliance itself is sort of a big piece of that initiative, and sort of, you know, with Matthew from Open Land stepping into that leadership role in that goal team, having him, you know, represent that work on stage at Congress is going to be a big key piece of that. And then in terms of the pub team, you heard this from Sharon. We'll see how much of it gets done, but for the moment, you know, preparing, you know, for the public to see the hub, you know, with the opportunity of Congress. So really reaching out and making sure that the language around all of the different pieces of work, you know, matches, is true, is sort of tested from the various initiative team leads, you know, because people will be going to the website, you know, especially folks who are new to Chicago, the Chicago Wilderness Alliance, who are pulled into the excitement of Congress, making sure everything's up to snuff there. And I won't say much about, I won't really say anything about the Jedi Roadmap team because they are following me on this agenda, but I'm very excited about where they're headed in their work. So I've said a lot about Congress, and I'm just going to say a few more words about it so you have a sense of how the initiative teams are going to be present at that event on November 3rd, and then we'll get a further update from Cherie later on in the agenda. There is a main stage panel celebrating a celebration of conservation successes and a look to the future that will feature essentially all of the initiative teams and the mapping hub. And you see there that that Amy Rosenthal has graciously agreed to moderate it. And then you see our confirmed panelists. It's a big panel, so we're probably going to break it up into 2 rounds because it is, you know, a lot of folks on stage. So what we're planning is for 2 rounds, but Amy and I are meeting next week to talk about some of those details, and I'll be meeting individually with everybody who has agreed to be a panelist just to make sure everyone sort of is prepared. And then the really exciting thing that has a lot of energy and a lot of excitement around it is that instead of there being sort of member tables or sponsorship tables or that type of thing at Congress, that what we're doing is that there will be a table for each of the initiative teams at, you know, around the room at Congress, plus the hub team, plus the Jedi Roadmap team, which will be a place that we can refer people to if you want to know more about this work. If you want to get involved, go check out the table for this initiative team. Go out and check out the table for that initiative team, and, you know, have a conversation with somebody. There'll be handouts that people can take away with the new messaging that PCI has developed. There'll be QR codes for folks to like go and be able to sign up to get updates from that team. And that's where, for instance, at the landscapes table, that's where we will have the big map. At the Jedi Roadmap table, the hope is to do, you know, some stuff with stickies to engage folks sort of where they are and thinking about that work. So the idea of having both it's spoken from the stage in terms of what the initiative team's work is, but then physical locations for folks to go and follow up is a big part of what we want to do at Congress. And then another quick piece, you know, I've alluded to the federal funding opportunities that are coming down. And one of the things that we are doing at Congress, and again, you know, sort of, is this the Congress update? Is this the goal team update? I'm going to talk about it a bit. And that is, we have invited Shalini Vajhala, founder and CEO of Refocus Partners, who was part of the Obama EPA. She is a Brookings Fellow. She's testified before the U.S. Senate around sort of climate and infrastructure initiatives. She's an expert on sort of how to begin to set up groups, organizations, and regions to take advantage of the funding that's coming down. She helps San Diego and Imperial counties in California prepare for just that. She's going to come give an overview about the opportunities on the main stage at Congress, and then also one of the facilitated opportunities later in the day at Congress to have a deeper dive will include Shalini for sort of a deep dive Q&A. Okay, so I think I did that in about, 15 minutes. That was a lot. Any quick clarifying questions? Know that, you know, there's a lot of notes in what we're going to provide in the minutes, but just any quick sort of clarifying questions before I yield my time.
I'm not seeing, oh, I see a hand. Do I see a hand? There we go. Victoria, please.
Hi, thank
And
you. I wanted to mention just a slight correction here in the federal funding opportunities. It's the inflation reduction.
yeah, got it, Victoria.
Yeah, and I know you already know that, but it can get confusing. And then the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, I think that's a subset of the bipartisan infrastructure law, which has a whole cascade of funding going to agencies across the federal government. So having something specific on the bipartisan infrastructure law, I think would be really useful.
Oh, thank you. Those are great notes.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Brandon.
just-
Anyone else? Kathy, you got your hand.
Yeah, Brandon, thank you. This is really great. A lot of work happened really fast, so it's really nice to see how it all came together. I just have something to share regarding making sure people feel like this is part of their job. At the Forest Preserves of Cook County, I asked our leadership, Arnold, to send out an email to all senior staff to make sure that people were allowed the afternoon to go to the Congress. So I think if that would be a good recommendation for all agencies, to just say, hey, because, you know, for our agency, it's big, and you want to make sure that the education team and the resource management team all understand that this is coming from the top. And I think it helps when somebody says it out loud. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you,
That
Kathy,
is-
for sharing.
Yeah, and that is fantastic leadership, Kathy. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, let me go to you and then Amy. You're on.
Yeah, well, just piggybacking on Kathy's comment, and this, of course, is a very different context because we are, of course, a small to medium nonprofit shop here. But I was going to comment to Brandon. I just want to echo 1,000%, Brandon, your slide about focus, about whether at the initiative level or even, quite frankly, at the entire alliance level, I would say, of picking what is the measurable, specific outcome deliverable we're going to do now and doing it. Because, related to what Kathy said, for years here at the Wetlands Initiative, I have struggled with getting staff to take me up on a very clear and overt offer that they should be able to actually participate and work on all of these regional efforts as part of their job time. And it's extremely hit or miss with TWI staff participating in meaningful ways. And that's why the bleeding edge that I always eventually hear back from staff, young or old, is about focus. Always, that they want it to be what are we doing, the deliverable, what is it we're going to produce here as this group regional thing. So I think that is a bleeding edge right there of getting a lot more energy, especially from our new younger professionals.
Thank you, Paul. Really, really appreciate that.
Thank you, Paul. Amy.
I just wanted to say that I am so much looking forward to Congress this year. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I know that we're still looking for sponsors. And so I would encourage folks, representative partners who are part of this process to please consider becoming a sponsor for this event. This is where we get to really look at who we are and where we're going in the next years. And so it's a really meaningful way to make a contribution, a highly visible one. Thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Amy, for that plug. And just in the effort of time here with what we have, Brandon, thank you for your leadership and for helping to tie all these pieces together here. We've got some great directions, some specifics that we're working towards through the alignment. So that is awesome. So thank you. The next, I'm going to turn it over to Raquel Garcia Alvarez and Danny Aboud, who are going to go over the JEDI roadmap team.
Hi, everyone. We'll also try to go through this fairly quickly. So as everyone knows, my name is Raquel Garcia Alvarez, and I am with the Forest Preserves of Cook County. I am the new Policy and Sustainability Manager. I just started that position last week. And then I'm joined with Dani from, and she will introduce herself when she will be presenting. So the roadmap, next slide. Next slide. So just to kind of remind everyone, the Alliance is in phase 3 of our JEDI project with Cream City Conservation. We're in the roadmap development phase. The first 2 phases included us doing the culture and diversity survey, which many of us filled out. And the second phase was us attending some of the JEDI trainings that Cream City Conservation offered. So based on some of the results from the culture assessment and internal knowledge, the roadmap working group held 6 strategy sessions with August Ball and identified initial areas of focus, which includes engagement, accessibility, and advocacy and awareness. We then went out to make sure that we did a survey, made sure that this is where people wanted to focus on or have the energy around. And we got some really good feedback, and people volunteered saying like, yes, I want to be part of this. This is also what I'm doing for my work. So, and they also asked us, as we talked about, like, they want the work to be focused. And so we set up, we're going to refine our organizational work plan into the SMARTY goals. And that stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, time-bound, and inclusive. We're going to have a CW Cafe on Friday, November 18th. Our tentative date is Friday, November 18th. We will be promoting this workshop at Congress. As Brandon said, we will have a JEDI table. I will be at the table to answer anyone's questions or to get people to sign up to be a part of this JEDI roadmap. And again, we want to reemphasize that we're not asking people to do any new things. We're asking people to share the work that they're doing so that way Chicago Wilderness can amplify and share it. For the next slide. For engagement, we know that it's very important to continue to engage various groups and communities within the Chicago Wilderness Alliance footprint. We understand that we're not actively representing the broad diversity of organizations and individuals advancing this work across the region. And we also want to make sure that we're reaching out to organizations that are working adjacent to us, that maybe ecology or is the second step, but health and wellness is really their priority. And next slide. So for our engagement action plan, our first really high priority for 2023 is to create effective practices and guidelines and to inventory who has some of these practices. As I mentioned, the Alliance is not asking people to do anything new, but to share what the organization is doing. For instance, the Forest Preserves, we have a few community engagement documents, and we still continue to do focus groups and have conversations with communities because we have different initiatives going on, such as we have 3 sites that we have prioritized community engagement that we're trying to kick off. We also partnered this past year with IIT and their Natures of Color project for them to do focus groups with the BIPOC community. And, IIT and the Nature of Colors project came up with a list of recommendations for us. And even though we're not able to partake in all of those recommendations, it is still good information to share out to everyone and to say like, hey, we're hearing that from the BIPOC community that if you want more individuals that self-identify as BIPOC to come out in nature, we first have to acknowledge the historical and cultural oppression that has happened on this land, because to them, safety is still really important. And so hearing that has reinforced what we've been doing of acknowledging historical and cultural ties to the land and sharing those narratives. So that is just one example of, the Forest Preserves helping to do the work and then also sharing it and partnering up with Chicago Wilderness to share it out, because, that project was not just for our eyes only. It could be shared out to everyone, and hopefully someone would be like, You know what? Actually, I am really glad because this is what we've also been hearing, and it will reinforce our Jedi goals in our organization. So I'm going to turn it over to Dani.
Thanks, Raquel. I'm Dani Aboud. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am the Director of Community Programs and Partnerships for Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods. To kind of build off of Raquel's intro, you know, this work is meant to be integrated into the fullness of these initiatives. I know we've just changed the lingo a lot. I tried to update the slides to match some of that language while we were talking because I was really excited about the refresh, and it's really helpful to have these words that were kind of like aligning around and trying to clarify, you know, the structure of the alliance that's been a bit diffuse, right? In past years, we have so many working groups or teams that are all doing amazing work, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel or reinvent the working group or subcommittee. We're trying to establish a standard framework that CWA is operating underneath that is focused and rooted in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So it's not about adding to our workloads, as Raquel said, it's about taking this framework that we've been adapting, that we've been refining with our own internal processes with the help of consultant groups like Cream City Conservation, and making sure that the work we're doing is rooted in Jedi principles, and that it's carried out in a way that's mindful, intentional, and meaningful. The next slide. So our second of the three goals that we are kind of outlining through the roadmap process is accessibility, which again, we already know so many of our teams are working on this goal, especially goal 5, whose focus is increasing equitable access to nature. And we know that we have a lot of resources, both as an alliance and within the individual partners in our alliance, but not everybody's plugged into them. Maybe not everybody knows about these resources. And we also know that there are these major barriers that people face in accessing nature and nature programs, right? Including language, transportation, technology, capacity, et cetera. Next slide. And so our plan in terms of high priority strategies for increasing our accessibility of the Alliance is first to really hone in on this audit that we'll be previewing shortly. So really trying to identify where the barriers are within our members or our partners initially. You know, as Raquel said, there are so many groups that have great documents and resources around Jedi initiatives and efforts. But we also know that not everybody is at the same place. There are folks who are leaders in this work. There are folks who are new to this work. And as an alliance, we have really the advantage of being able to share resources and lift each other up and help get people to the next phase, right? We've had these conversations for a while. We've had a lot of people attend the Cream City Conservation workshops. We know a lot of our partners have been attending many different DEI or Jedi series and trying to incorporate this work, but how can we actually take those conversations, that energy, and push it into action? And first, we need to see what people are already doing. And so the audit that we'll be unveiling at Congress, or launching and asking people to participate in, is different from the initial survey that people did from Cream City Conservation that was looking more into workplace culture and individual experiences, and is instead more focused on really that piece of what is your organization doing? And if you have resources to share, please share them. If you need help in any areas, let us know so that we can connect you with the resources that are being shared. So it's really about taking what we already have, again, not reinventing the wheel, but making sure that people who are leaders in this work are being amplified, and people who need leaders to look up to are connected to those leaders. And so that's what the audit's looking to do. And then again, amplifying resources, tools, and trainings for members is another high priority, because again, we have a lot of these materials, and especially with the relaunch of the website and making things a lot easier to navigate and not behind these barriers of, you know, logging in or having a membership portal, it'll be a lot easier to share those resources as we aggregate them. So these will be the first two steps here. And I've highlighted in these slides too, where the Executive Council will be engaged more intensely in these processes, or really, again, it's not that the roadmap is a separate team. It's about incorporating these pieces into the work that's happening. And so in terms of the Executive Council's work, you know, we know that we want to adopt a land acknowledgement statement, but we want it to be very meaningful. We want there to be actions behind that statement. We want it to be rooted in something that is intentional and not just, you know, adopting a statement. We could pull a statement tomorrow if we wanted to, based on all of the amazing land acknowledgement statements that members or partners in our network already have. But we want it to mean something coming from CW as an alliance, and we want it to have actions and accompanying, you know, again, to these Smarty goals, things that we can build upon that prove that we're really doing this work. And additionally, the adoption of an accessibility statement and accompanying actions falls under that same vein. So making sure that from top down and from the bottom up, we are incorporating these JEDI principles across our work and having policies and procedures that we can point to continue to guide this. So it's not just a diffuse idea that we talk about, but we have the structure in place to guide this work forward. Next slide. And our final goal area is advocacy and awareness. So once again, we know there are these resources. We know that we have this really strong group of partners. We have such amazing work that's happening in our alliance, but there are groups who may be interested in joining the alliance or who could benefit from the resources and support we have available, but may not really understand what we do, may not have a knowledge that we could be advancing their initiatives or helping to advocate for their work as well. And again, this is where we already see so much happening with our communications team. It's really about just integrating these principles into this refresh and into the work that we already have going on. Next slide. So again, here's where the Executive Council is kind of pulled into or called to incorporate this into this work. So creating a JEDI policy and advocacy statement and guidelines to go with that. So when we put out calls to action, when we respond to events that are happening, we can't just have kind of a slapstick response and be reactionary. We want to be really proactive, and we want to have guidelines in place for how we respond in a way that's meaningful and helpful to situations as they arise. We saw a lot of organizations kind of panicking to have responses to things that happened, especially during the pandemic, especially as we had increased, this kind of increased social reckoning happening within our society. But a lot of those statements never really followed up with real actions. And so we want to make sure, again, that these initiatives we are putting forward aren't just ideas, they're not just conversations, they are structurally rooted into the Alliance's work across the board. And we want to be able to point people directly to some kind of guideline or policy if they come to us with questions about why we did or didn't comment on a certain event or a certain issue. We literally can point them to a document and say, well, here's how we approach our advocacy work, approach our work as an alliance, and how we respond to the events in this world as they happen. And knowing that these things are complicated and the world's getting more complicated every day, the more we can have in place from a structural level, the better we are to maintain a successful approach in JEDI work. Next slide. And so finally, again, I hope the connections to the Executive Council's work are clear, but really what we're trying to do is integrate JEDI work throughout all CW goal teams. We are not trying to create a new initiative, but rather we're trying to, in keeping with this refresh, we're trying to build out the framework that's going to center all of our initiatives within these concepts of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we're not doing it's not a new goal team that's doing something separate. It's about how we make sure all the work we're doing that's already really strong is rooted in these principles that we say we stand for. And so in order to achieve all of this, we need to have internal structure that supports equitable initiatives. We need to have policy and procedural guidelines that are coming out of the Executive Council, just like we need to have strong Smarty goals and action plans coming out of our different initiative groups that, again, are rooted in these principles. And so our next step is a membership audit that we'll be unveiling at Congress. And Raquel and I wanted to kind of preview it with you. We'd love some feedback from folks. So I'll drop a link in the chat to that so people can kind of preview, but we have one question we wanted to pose to folks if people want to come off mute or add it in the chat. One of the questions we ask in the audit is if, as a result of your organization or institution attending, the Cream City Conservation workshops or similar justice, equity, diversity, inclusion trainings, if there are any meaningful policies or procedures your organization has adopted as a result of attending these trainings. And if so, what are they?
So thank you, Danny, Raquel. Great work on presenting this. And so you've asked a question to the group, and I don't know if anybody wants to share with today just a few of ideas to the group. And then, of course, we'll participate in the survey just based on our timing. Any questions and thoughts?
We also just want to remind everyone that, these resources that Chicago Wilderness provided, the trainings and the cultural assessment, are really valuable tools. You know, so if we want them to continue to provide those resources, or if there are grant opportunities, I think this is us knowing within the Alliance that people are actually doing the work and not just like, oh, we're still learning and you know, maybe we'll get around it to next year when you do something else. You know, that something else may not come if we're not showing that we're benefiting from the resources that are being provided.
Yeah, and I also want to clarify too, this audit is meant to be taken by only once per organization. So rather like, unlike the cultural assessment where we were asking many members of our different partners organizations to take it, this is meant to be something that's submitted by each organization. So that could be maybe an executive director filling it out, a leadership team, you know, multiple staff weighing in. We want it to be something that's done really mindfully and not something that's kind of filled out super quickly in between other things. But we are only asking for one submission per organization. So, you know, a little bit more intention behind the submission, but we're not requiring that, you know, you chase down multiple staff to fill out a survey. So I'm dropping a link in the chat to the draft of the survey or the audit, excuse me. Feel free to reach out to me or Raquel with any thoughts or questions about the individual pieces. And we'd be happy to incorporate any feedback.
Thank you, Raquel. Thank you, Danny. Great work, and to the whole JEDI team with great showing here. And again, have everybody look into this, and we look to have you at Congress and talking more with you as these initiatives move forward.
And we'll both promote the survey as well as the cafe. We have the information. We're going to work on the descriptions, but we'll get that language together and start promoting that on November 18th.
Correct. And of course, as always, with any of these initiatives, groups within your organization or others, to help make those connections so that we can get them engaged, involved in leading these efforts. All right, Cherie, amazing here. She's been doing a lot with the Congress team, and she's going to give some highlights on where we're at, where we're going, and what she needs. So Cherie, it's all yours.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone. So I'll just go over the basics of what Congress is this year, the things that haven't already been covered by someone else. So it is November 3rd at the UIC Forum. It is a half-day event starting at 1 p.m. The goal of the event is to bring together everyone and to celebrate all forms of conservation work across the region. The content throughout the day will help launch the Green Vision Initiatives framework, as has already been described by Sharon from PCI and Brandon from Bold Bison, and also the JEDI folks. The focus of the day will be forward-looking, and the tone will be excited and energized. The content is designed to engage both existing CWA partners and others, especially mid-level career people and students who may not be active already in the Alliance. We will have a keynote address by Deborah Shore. Earlier in her career, she was a longtime leader in Chicago Wilderness, including being the founder of the Chicago Wilderness magazine. For many years, she served as a commissioner for the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, and she is now the regional administrator for US EPA Region 5. In addition to the keynote, we'll have two panels. Brandon described one of them, which will tell conservation success stories from around the region and is rooted in the Green Vision Initiatives teamwork. The second panel will focus on career development among conservation practitioners and the sometimes winding career paths that bring people to this work. There will be video introductions to field trips that are being planned for next year as an extension of Congress. And those field trips were added this year out of recognition that maybe not everyone wants to come together in one huge room and spend a lot of time together with a couple hundred other people. So the field trips will be next year. They'll be spaced out across the region and across the year. The day will have 3 MCs who will help keep the energy up and transition us between the different parts of the program. So that's new and will be really interesting and exciting, I think. The end of the afternoon, we will have an open networking social hour, as has been part of Congress in the past. During that social hour, there will be optional facilitated discussions on the CW Hub, and continuing the conversation about career development. And then, as Brandon described, there will also be a presentation and Q&A session on federal funding available for conservation work from these two big federal bills that have passed in the last year. An additional part of the day that we haven't talked about much because it's just coming together is an informal mentoring component to help connect students and early career professionals with mentors throughout the room. So people who have already registered for Congress will receive an email asking if they want to participate in this informal mentoring. Either a mentor or a mentee, and if you say yes, you will get a star on your name badge, and the stars will hopefully help mentors and mentees find each other over the course of the day. The tickets for Congress are only $25, and there are no questions asked scholarships available to cover the ticket cost if anyone needs one. If you have not already registered for Congress, I encourage you to do so, and encourage colleagues and friends to register as well. If you are planning to attend, there are still Day of Congress volunteer opportunities. These are fairly easy tasks like helping with the coat room in 1-hour shifts. And if you are interested in doing that, I would ask you to contact our volunteer coordinator, Tara Lichtenberger from the Chicago Botanic Garden. I will drop that info into the chat. So that's it. We hope that all attendees will feel welcomed and leave energized. Any questions, feedback, comments?
I don't see anybody's hands up. A lot of applause here. And this has been a big undertaking with all the partners and all the sponsors and all the work. And so I can't thank everyone enough for stepping up and assisting. This is a big undertaking. It's, as you said, a celebration. So we look forward to seeing everyone there, packing the room and elevating and launching this great work that we've been working on in a post-pandemic world. So awesome. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So the next announcement that I have is to recognize and thank an outgoing Chicago Wilderness Committee member, partner, and a member of our steering committee. And I will let Amy speak to where she is headed, but she will be leaving the Alliance. She'll be here through Congress, and she's been an amazing force of nature in her own right, with energizing not only the steering committee and ensuring that it was integrated through all our work, a cheerleader, an initiator. And so I just am I'm sad to see you leaving our efforts, but I hope, as you announce and share with everybody where you are going to, that you will keep us in our heart and find a pathway to connect here with the Alliance on a, but we're going bigger if we keep you connected. So Amy, thank you so much. And if you would share with everybody where you're headed.
Yes, Elizabeth, thank you so much. It is with real mixed emotions that I depart in this role and this incredible alliance. I mean, the last couple of years have been amazing, seeing so many changes, so much growth and momentum and diversity of partners coming together, and infrastructure, our own virtual and otherwise. I've been impressed, awed, and honored to be a part of it all. And so it was with a real sense of regret that I depart the Field Museum after, like the day after Congress. So I hope to see you all there in person. And I will be going to the aerospace company Planet. It's a company that makes shoebox-sized satellites and puts them up into low Earth orbit, and it takes a high-resolution photo of every place on the planet every day. In 2023, for the first time, we'll see 400 bands of color far beyond the visible light spectrum. And that is going to allow us to revolutionize how we think about biodiversity monitoring and management as countries make these decadal commitments to biodiversity protection, including our own. We will know in almost real time, not just whether there's forest or no forest, but how habitats are composed, how that composition changes over time, whether it's restoration or threats, and then where we need to drive attention and resources just in time when it matters before those most likely extinctions occur. So I am really excited to be part of that. I'll still be part of this world and all of the work, and I will take all of the lessons and insights I've gained from all of you with me. And I am still going to be a huge fan always of Chicago Wilderness and a supporter, and I will be turning up at CW cafes and congresses and other events well into the future. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Laura and my co-leads, Radhika and Tish, and Danny, who's been doing so much of this work. I know there will be many successes and achievements ahead.
Well, thank you, Amy. I just want to give a big round of applause and appreciate you so very much, and your effort to kind of encourage others to step forward and provide space for other leaders. So again, you'll be missed. So. All right, so that brings us to the next portion of business, and that's the nominations and recruitment. And with our alliance, there is a process on, well, right now we're still the steering committee, and we'll probably go to a steering team. Within the roles, we have some members that are renewing up. You're allowed to serve for 2 consecutive 3-year terms. And with Jim Jarazal leaving, that left a vacancy in the vice chair role. Nathaniel Pila was our executive secretary, and his position was up, and he had elected or requested to go to an at-large member and not serve in that secretary role. So we're kind of playing musical chairs here. So Nathaniel to re-up and take just an at-large position. Leslie Dorwith also up for another 3-year new renewal, and so she's continuing onward in this recommendation. And then Michelle, her term was up, and with Jim's departure, she has graciously agreed to step up into the role of vice chair, which will be a 3-year term. And then Jim Anderson elevating up to take the role of secretary for that 3-year term. With Amy's departure, Mark Bowman stepping in to play out the remainder of her term on the steering committee. And of course, next year he would be up for a renewal, should that be something. And then brand new, but not new to the Chicago Wilderness Alliance, leading our climate action, Ted Hafner, was elevated to take an at-large seat for 3 years. So that is our slate. We have one position that remains open with all the musical chairs here for a 2-year term. And at this point, our recommendation is that remains open. We continue to look at through Congress, look through our diversity, our geographical needs, et cetera, to ensure that our steering team is representative of the alliance and that we are well positioned going forward with that. So with that, I would request a motion to accept the slate for 2023 onward as presented.
You said that Michelle's term would be 3 years, but the screen seems to say 2.
Oh, I'm sorry, you are correct. Michelle's the vice chair. She is filling in. Thank you for that correction. Jim Jarazal was reelected. So basically the vice chair role is filling in an unexpired term of the vice chair. So that's why it's 2 years. Yes.
Okay.
I would make it a motion to accept the nominations. This is Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
Second, this is Kathy.
Kathy, thank you. Any discussion on the nominations as presented? All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Thank you. That is our slate. They will be inducted during our January Executive Council meeting when their terms will begin in this new capacity. And again, very thankful for leadership. And I just, again, want to encourage anyone going forward. There's plenty of opportunities to lead this amazing alliance. And again, we need to reach out and continue to encourage others to step up, whether in our initiative leads to all the teams that we have going on. And there is always room for more. And again, as we see many names that we want to make sure that we are the sustaining. And I state that as my term. I am in my second term. My term I will have next year, and then right, and then I think I have 24, right, and then I'm off as well. And so looking to build that pipeline to keep everything moving strong and consistently with a shared leadership, right? I mean, that was the whole goal, is to allow this natural evolution of rotation and to keep us vibrant and on the mark. So thank you, everyone. All right, so let's see here. How are we doing on times? It's 11:28 here. Do we have any updates or announcements from our working group just to kind of get us back on time? If we've got something to share, we've had a wonderful morning so far. Looking for any hands raised. Okay, seeing none. Laura, any updates from you?
I wanted to just invite everybody to our cafes that we have going on next week. We've got two great ones. We've got the Trails for Wildlife and People next Wednesday, October 26th at noon, and then a Magic Stump discussion and movie the next day. So spend your lunch hours with us and come and learn about this amazing resource using GIS to do trail sighting, and then the Magic Stump with Bob Dolgan doing his magic for nature throughout the region. So I'll drop the link in the chat, but that's my biggest update, and look forward to seeing you all at Congress.
Great, thank you, Laura. All right, any announcements that anyone would like to share with the group? Vote on November 8th. And I believe there's an initiative going onward in Cook County.
There is. Yeah, got our fingers crossed.
And if you don't live in Cook County, please tell your friends and family members who do to support this referendum. It's really important.
And a thank you to everyone that's participated in that coalition that's built to build that support base. So awesome.
Elizabeth, I have one announcement I'd like to share with the group since it's so timely. Tomorrow is the last quarterly meeting of the Northwest Indiana Urban Waters Partnership. I highly encourage all of you to engage with this group. There are lots of opportunities to learn about what's happening in Northwest Indiana, bring people into the Chicago Wilderness Alliance fold, and meet and connect with new potential collaborators and project partners. So please do consider taking some time tomorrow morning. It's from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. And if you need any information, please go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll make sure you have the links that you need.
Terrific. Thank you, Victoria. And it's just so great. We've got a very strong base here as we're bringing new partners to the table, and it's very exciting. So our new schedule for next year, just mark your calendars. I think as we go forward, we'll continue to discuss. Right now, the Zoom format allows in our geographical region to connect here and spend the morning together at least 4 times a year. Clearly, face-to-face with Congress is going to be key. And then of all the work through the working group. So again, my appreciation and thanks. And looking forward to see everyone at Congress. Lori, anybody else with their hands up that?
Raquel
Yeah.
had her hand up.
I just wanted to mention that our Board of Commissioners approved our second position paper on amplifying diversity and inclusion, and it is on our website. I put the link in the chat in case anyone wants to read it. So it's hot off the presses in some ways in the virtual sense. All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Well, that again, we've got our work. We'll get all the deliverables from today out to everybody on our new branding and messaging, and we'll all start speaking and continuing to do the great work that everybody does, is bringing more individuals and organizations and partners into our work We're moving, and we have been in active mode, but we're going to start showing so everybody externally sees the action that's being accomplished, and we get some big dollars, some big picture ideas coming into to make this area and to fulfill that vision of ours. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. This is
Kathy, a
Kathy.
second.
I'll second. This is Cherie.
Cherie, thank you. All right, all those in favor for adjourning today's meeting, motion by saying aye.
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 Those
Take care,
opposed,
everyone.
nay.
Hope to see everyone at the Open Lands Luncheon.
And we'll see you on Friday.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your efforts.